top right hand corner of your browser window your name. I'm logged in under a trial login right now so that whatever I put in here doesn't damage anyone's database, but you'll see your name there. When you hover over your name, you'll see an option that says log out, unless of course you're Jane, and then you'll see an option for settings, which we won't spend any time on today because Jane and I have been through that. Up also in the top right hand, you're going to see add contact. No matter what screen you're in, no matter what you're doing, the add contact button is going to always be available for you. So when that happens, when a contact comes in, or whether you're working in a campaign or reports, you can always click on add contact, and it's going to pop a window up in front of what you're working on that will have a lead in it. If you add a lead and you save that lead, once you click save, it will take you to that contact information, and you'll have to navigate back to the screen that you were previously working on. But if for some reason you don't actually have to add that lead and you click the X, it will go back to the screen that you were on. We'll get into how you add a contact here in a moment. On your left-hand menu bar, you have 5 different menu options, and then a users tab if you have the permissions for that. Number 1 is your to-dos, the tasks that need to be done. Number 2 is contacts. Contacts is the people that you're working with, or leads or patients, however you want to call it. Campaigns is the marketing that you're doing at your practice to try to generate leads. Professionals relates to those people who are sending you patients. And reports, of course, tells you how you're doing at all of the above. If once you're comfortable with this menu and you know where you're at and you've memorized the icons, you want to give yourself a little bit more working room on the screen, you can click on this button here and it will shrink the screen down to where you just have icons. When you hover over the icons, it will tell you what that specific tab is used for. But again, your option, you can always leave it open or you can leave it closed. When you log in, there's no to-dos on my list for trial right now, but when you log in, instead of seeing welcome to iSee, you're going to be seeing the to-dos that you're responsible for, and it will have the following information available to tell you about it. Number 1 is your date that it's due. Number 2 is the subject, and this subject will be something you type in. Related, we'll talk about who it's related to, meaning if I relate it to a patient, then it will tell me that I have a task that I need to complete in order to help a patient through the sales pipeline. Or if it happens to be a professional, then it will have that professional's name as well. And then last of all, once you've completed it, it will show the date that you completed that task. I'm going to show you how that populates here in just a moment, but I'm going to do that after we complete a contact entry. The next thing that I'm going to come back and do contacts last. The next thing I want to show you is campaigns. Our campaigns are, I think Wendy, if I remember right, or maybe it's Jane, is mostly responsible for entering the campaign information. You're able to define it any way you want, but we define a campaign as any type of activity that you ever do to try to generate leads, and typically a campaign is associated with some kind of financial outlay. Even if it's a $200 booth at a health fair or a bridal fair or something like that, that qualifies in our mind as a campaign. Anything that you're doing at all to generate a lead should have a campaign associated with it. Obvious exceptions to that rule are word of mouth that come to you just because someone had a good experience and now they're sharing. But for the most part, everything else you're doing in your business affairs from day to day should have some sort of a campaign associated with it. So once you go into a campaign, you can either add a campaign or else you can just view a campaign. Once you click on the campaigns menu, you have the option in the top right hand corner above the list to add a campaign, or you have the option to click on a campaign and look at the details related to that campaign. Each campaign has a name. It should always have a start date and a finish date, and I'll show you why that's important in a moment. And it's a good idea to put what the budget for that campaign was, and we'll get into that in a little bit later. Mostly this is for Jane's purposes in identifying return on investment and the quality of any given campaign versus another. Once your campaign has results, these little pieces of information up here in the effectiveness box will tell you how much you actually spent, what your total revenue was, what the return on investment was, and give you a sense for every dollar what you spend, the corresponding amount that you make. Down below, you have the option, which is different than the version of iSee that you were using before. Down in this section, you have the actual capability to monitor success by lead source. So when you create a campaign, you put the particular lead sources that you're using to generate that lead, description about what the campaign is doing for you, or what you're using for that particular medium. If you're using a different radio spot for one station than the other, or a different TV ad, or a different print ad, you would want to identify what ad was being used there. You enter how much you spend, and then every time a patient gets a service and has a status of a completed surgery, it will produce the results here for you, so you can see the product of your campaign. Again, you also have the ability to enter to-dos. So if you have a campaign that's expiring in 3 months and you want to evaluate it 2 months from now to determine whether you want to rerun it, you could put a to-do in here that tells you to review the effectiveness of that campaign 2 months from now, so that you have plenty of time to make the decision for that 3rd month. The next tab is for professionals. I'm going to just click on a professional, but again, you can click up here to add a professional into your system. So you're going to find that the professional and the contact demographic information is almost identical. There's a couple of very important and key differences that I want to point out that I think are really cool, that will really help guide you in your relationships with your professionals. The first one is here. We have all their demographic information, but down here we have the ability to create tasks or to-dos, and also to create notes. And whenever you go to create a note, it puts this cool little sticky note up. Once you've typed your note and saved that note and updated this professional or the patient, let's go back to that tab. It will actually put a time and a date stamp on the note with the initials of the person who was logged in and created that note. You also have the ability to go in and add a to-do, like I said before. I'm not going to spend any time on it here because I'm going to show you how it works in Contacts, and it works identically in Contacts to how it works in Professionals. But the last thing about the Professionals, which is really cool, if you're doing an effective job of adding in your leads, then every patient that this doctor refers in will be listed in this table here. So as time goes on, you're going to be able to identify how many, and by name, the patients that professional returned into you or referred into you. Lastly is reports, and we have 3 major report categories now, but those reports can be turned into 25 different reports each, depending on how you choose date ranges, service categories, and service types. And we will have the access to be able to do it by person as well, so that you can drill it down by just your leads, just your patients, to identify with, number 1, how many leads are being created, number 2, how many of those leads are being captured. If, for example, you don't have any new data, it's going to tell you this based on your date range, which I'm not going to get too much into reports today. We'll probably follow up on that another day. But then your conversion proficiency will do the same thing. It'll tell you what percentage of patients are converting to a procedure. So the thing that matters the most in all of this is how effective you are at entering quality information in the contact screen. So hovering back up here to my button at the top of the screen, I click Add Contact. When I click Add Contact, the first thing that's going to ask in logical sequence for identifying the effectiveness of your organization in generating and converting leads is the lead source. So when you click on the drop-down button on lead source, and your version of this is different than mine, yours is customized specific to your practice, you'll have a full list of all the lead sources that you're currently employing to try to generate leads for your business. If, for example, I choose a lead source that is associated with a campaign, then it's going to automatically bring up this field, and it's going to ask you, it's going to prompt you to enter in the campaign that lead source is producing leads from. When I select that campaign, this patient, if they follow through a surgery, that campaign will now show, once they have a completed service and a surgery completed status, it will report the money that we made on that service for that campaign, in addition to just having it for that lead. The next step is to enter in what the patient is interested in. This doesn't necessarily mean that it's the service that they had, but it's a good way to identify what initially prompted that patient to call us. So I'm just going to choose iLASIK to start with. The next step is to indicate what their lead status is. Now this lead status list looks really short compared to what you were used to using, but that's by design. You will not see all of the lead statuses on this preliminary list because patients don't generally go from an inquiry to surgery on the same day. Typically they have to follow our process of a consult or a pre-op or both, and then on to surgery. So these status lists, as you see them as you move the patient through the pipeline, will be specific to the potential status of that lead during the sales cycle. So in this one, we're going to say we did a good job on the phone and we scheduled a consult. We're going to enter in all of their information, and I'm just going to put nonsense information in for a minute. We'll put in gender male, date of birth. We'll go 0101 20, well, let's go 2000. They'll be really young. We put in a street address. City, zip code. I don't know what your zip code is down there, but we'll put that in for fun. The last piece of information after your demographic information is who are they assigned to. It's going to automatically default the person who's logged in. So if you're logged in and you're adding a contact, your name will be listed here. But if it needs to be changed to somebody, you can go ahead and change it in the list here. You're also able to select your location. So whether it's Phoenix or Mesa or anywhere else, you can select the location that this lead called for or called from, and you can also enter their account number once they have an account created from CompuLink. When that's completed, I'm actually going to stop here for just a minute and point out a couple of things. We require you to enter in all of the information in this screen here. If you don't, you're going to get errors, and it's not going to let you save that lead. So it's very important to capture that information. We realize that in all cases that you can't capture all of that information in every case, but Jane has created list options for you that will allow you to identify if, after you've tried your hardest and couldn't get the information, that you can choose an unknown or an other category. Lead status is very important because it starts to drive the ability for you to manage where your patients are in the sales pipeline. So I urge you to make sure your statuses are always correct. Once you've put in the information that's necessary, you can click Save, and it will take you to the details of that particular lead. Number one, it'll show you the contact details or their demographics on this side. The second thing is it will show you, highlighted in bold here, what their current status is, and that status is what you selected when you created the lead. From here, you're able to update the status at any time as you move your patient through the sales pipeline. If, for example, you have a status and from your list you don't see what you need, you can always select the All box here, then choose the drop down, and every one of your lead statuses will be displayed, as opposed to just those statuses that are subsequent to the one that you have now. Also in the contact screen, you have three boxes. I've already shown you to-dos and I've shown you notes. Adding notes is identical to what we've done before. As I showed you before, you just create the sticky note and enter in the information on the note, and you're done. And once you refresh the screen, that will end up time and date stamping that lead. On to-dos, very, very simple process. All you have to do is enter the due date, enter your subject, assign the user, whoever it might be. I'm going to choose trial for now, and click add. I want to highlight something really interesting and cool here. Now that I've created that task, The only thing I have to do to show that I've completed that task is click on that button when the time comes. But I'm not going to do that right now because I want to show you what it will look like on your screen when you log in. But before I do that, I'm just going to highlight this screen, this section here of your screen, which is the lead source. I've talked to Jane about this. We're actually modifying this section here to where you can add multiple lead sources so that you're able to track if a lead was brought to you through a number of different channels. So back to the to-dos, this is what you'll see when you log in on your screen. Now that I have that task in there and I have a due date, it's going to show up on my list of tasks. For now, because we want you to get used to using the program by connecting with the contact, if you click today here, it won't do anything. But if I click on Bill's name and it takes me back to his contact screen and I'm ready to complete that task, as soon as I click on today, it's going to ask me if it's okay to be marked as complete. I'm going to click OK, and it's going to now show that the date is complete. So to reinforce what I was telling you before, you see how I've refreshed the note? I've refreshed the contact's information. You can see here that the date and time and the person who entered that note was refreshed on that note, and it becomes a permanent part of the record. So that's a lot of information in a very brief time. But I hope what you've seen from so far, what I've shown you, is how much simpler it is to get all of the contact information on screen and into the database than the previous versions we were using. The last thing that I have to show you on contacts is services. Services are those surgeries or procedures that you're doing for your patients. To add a service, again, it's consistent with every other menu we have here. Click on Add. We select our service from the menu. In this case, I've put in a default fee amount of $400,000. We get a lot of money for our Relax up here in Vegas. Enter your date of service. Put in your service provider. Click Add, and now I have a service. So, if I have a patient who has a service entered and the date of service complete and their status is still consult scheduled, when I go to my report that tells me my conversion proficiency, this lead will not be counted in there. So once you've entered a service and that service is complete, it's important that you make sure that this person is moved through the sales pipeline. So after they've had a consult, we update them to surgery scheduled and click update, and it changes their status here to surgery scheduled. Once they've had surgery scheduled, we put surgery complete and click update, and now it shows that this patient's had a completed surgery, they've had Relax as a service, and it'll also remind me that there's no subsequent status available. So if I click on this list, once they've had surgery, it's the end of the sales pipeline. But if I ever needed to go back and correct it, I check the all box, pull up my list of lead statuses, and choose the one I want. I'm not going to in this case. So once I go back to my conversion proficiency report, it's going to show, so far, I have 100% of my leads converted and 0 not converted in the month of July. The last thing I want to show you on this list, whenever you run reports, which is a really cool thing, anytime you're trying to get information, and I'm going to actually go back here to my contacts to do this. Above each one of the columns here is the ability to search. So if I want to search on numbers that have 300 in them, I can type in 300 and enter, and it will bring up everybody with 300 in their number. If I want to drill it down further and put in mix with the phone number of 300, then I can even drill down the information even tighter. If I want to clear that one out and say surgery complete, well, I don't have anybody with mix and surgery complete, so I delete surgery complete, I hit enter, and now I can pull my list of people who are surgery complete. If I want everybody that's just assigned a trial, then I can do that. Oops, I hit back. Shouldn't have done that. But every time you see a list that has these bubbles, these fields above it, what it means is you're allowed to search that column by free texting in information that you want.
What about our account number? Where would we check that out?
So right now I don't have that added in, but we can add that in for you.
Yeah.
So you'll be able to put the column in here.
Sir, can you add the account number on search for like add contacts?
Yes. Yeah, I'll put an account number for you.
Right now we're having to go to contact, search by name,
Uh-huh.
and then we're having to go to add contact. Instead of doing it under contact and then add contact, can you just search under add contact? Or any already contact? You know what I'm saying?
I think I know what you're saying. I think I know what you're saying. If I was in a Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
We're having to flip between two screens to search to see if the patient's already been added to the computer.
So if I'm hearing you right, you're saying could I add a search contact up here in this, like somewhere in this screen? Or
Yes.
from this screen? Which one are you asking?
Okay, not on campaign select. Go to, okay, yeah, you're on add contact.
Yeah.
So could we search to see if they exist in the add contact screen?
Well, you can't right now, but I can talk to the programming dudes and see what they say about how to do that. I actually don't know the answer to that right now, but I can ask.
Yeah, if they could search by name or by...
The iSee procedure.